Welcome back to another episode of Torque. So today, for me, this is kind of exciting. We are going to install the inner and outer wheelhouse on the passenger side and also that quarter panel. We get to put on big pieces of sheet metal. Hopefully it's going to look really good. Let's go ahead and head out to the barn and get to work. All right, we're to the good part, and that's gonna be replacing this quarter panel, inner outer wheelhouse. Before we got started, before I did anything, I started taking measurements, and I took a ton of measurements. Kind of took a picture with my phone. Was able to put all the measurements in. I mean, I took measurements from edge to edge, front and back, center, across. I took pictures as well going forward from the edge of the door frame to the forward piece of vertical frame stiffener that I have there, and then across, like at a body line going forward to that frame piece that I welded in just for support. I've kind of marked off where I want to cut. I'm going to use the plasma cutter. It's going to be a lot easier, and then just like I did with the inner rocker, I'm just going to peel back these areas and try and take them a little bit at a time. Hopefully the new quarter panel will line up in that inner and outer wheelhouse. So let's go ahead and break out the plasma cutter and cut this thing off. Now the quarter panel is off, let's look at some of the crappy repairs that were done previously. You can see that they just pop riveted the new quarter panel right over the top, right onto the old quarter panel. They had Bondo all the way across this, so this has got to come apart right there. You can see this is all eaten away. I've got a repair piece for this. I have the inner and outer wheelhouse as one assembly. You can see that the lip is also pop riveted on. And then, of course, this is welded right to the edge, and they just did a terrible job at that. I did catch there's like a little tiny support that goes underneath here. I just caught the tip of it. I'll be able to weld those back in, smooth it out. It'll be fine. I'll have to drill out all these spot welds. So I've got a little bit of work to do. I also have this drop-off panel. Like I said, I've got that piece. I'll have to weld that up on top. Most of those look like they're larger, so you have to trim them to fit, which we'll do. So we'll go ahead and start pulling off the rest of the quarter panel, and then once we have that off, we'll pull off the wheelhouse, and we'll also cut off this drop panel. We'll try and fit everything kind of loosely in place before we do any welding. And I just want to show you guys something. The quarter panel, of course, wraps around. This little piece is not included with your tail light panel or the quarter panel. So I left this in place. The tail light panel is going to replace. So when I fit the inner and outer wheelhouse on, I'll fit the quarter panel on. I'll put some screws in to hold this in place, and then I'll replace this tail panel. The little support that I thought was down below, I thought I hit with the plasma cutter, was actually the old quarter panel. So yeah, you can see how they overlapped it. Pretty crappy. Pretty much I've just cleaned everything up, and we're going to start fitting. I do want to clean up a lot of this metal, and I'll put some rust bullet on it. So I'm going to take some measurements first on the inner and outer wheelhouse, just for the trunk itself. From there down, you can see I've already taken one measurement, and then I'll start pulling off the inner and outer wheelhouse, and we'll also replace this trunk drop off. All right, I kind of cheated with the inner fender well, the wheel well. What I did is I used the plasma cutter on a lot of pieces and just cut around where the spot welds were, even these frames up here, and then pulled it out. Now I can just cut the spot welds and kind of peel that metal out. So it's going to be a lot easier to do it that way. I will have to do this drop off for the trunk. I told you that before. So we'll do that in just a few minutes. But let's go ahead and peel this stuff away. Okay, so we've got everything peeled back. You can see there's some spots that were rusted up pretty good on this lip on the trunk floor. I'm gonna have to dolly some of this stuff out. I'm gonna have to make a corner, you know, rounded on this backside when I'm fitting the inner wheelhouse on. I'm gonna do this, install that, and then install some of the couple rust repair spots on the trunk. So let's get those done, and then we'll get everything primed and start fitting the inner and outer wheelhouse. Okay, you can see I went ahead and cut off that lip. I'm going to get the inner wheelhouse fitted right, and then I'll know the spacing for this. Here's the drop panel. I've got the new one welded in. I just lined up the back side. The quarter panel, actually, the face hits this along with down here, so it's not like it has to be perfect. You have a little bit of room on both sides to trim off. It's not a big deal. I was able to repair that rust spot right there, put a patch panel in there. So I have to trim the inner wheelhouse. Well, actually the metal, the Mustang, the body itself, you can see my inner wheelhouse doesn't fit perfect. It's a little bit more rounded here on the back side. So I'm gonna trim this, round it off. That's one of those things, it's like a compromise. That panel is not going to fit perfect, so either modify the body or modify the panel. You see the rear part of the inner rocker. I had to knock that in. This is the perfect distance, so it actually touches the front part of the inner wheelhouse. So let's go ahead and continue. All right, I'm going to show you real quick. The other quarter, the brand new quarter, it's fitting just like this. It's tight up at the front and a huge gap at the back. That's probably 3/8 of an inch. So let me show you what I'm going to do for that. So here's the new quarter. You can see the line, it was touching there, and you can see that it was probably a 1/4, 3/8 off down here. So I actually hammered and dollied this completely flat, marked exactly where the bend needs to go. I'm going to put a block of wood on the back side, and then put one on the front, clamp these into position, and then I'm going to tap this edge down to a 90°. All right, so here we go. So I've got the block on the back side, block on the front. I've got 2 clamps on each side. I'm about a 1/16 of an inch from my bend line down at the bottom, and I'm going to go ahead and tap this thing at a 90° angle, and then we're going to try and fit this and see if it works. All right, so I'm really happy with the results. I probably could have come down another 1/16 of an inch, but it fits really well. I probably have an 1/8 of an inch of a gap. I'm probably going to end up welding this seam so it's seamless. On the back side, you can see that this is overhanging just a little bit. Front side, it's right where it should be. So this is a little bit wider than it should be. So I'm going to have to cut here and move the wheel well arch just a little bit forward so it lines up with this back end. Since we have our seam done at the bottom, next is this, that it sticks out so far. So I actually cut the edge off. I didn't want to go too far over because you have profile here. So I'm going to trim just a little bit, gradually going larger till I hit the bottom. Hopefully this wheel well arch, it'll be unnoticeable. So I'll go ahead and start sanding this, and then we'll see how it looks. Well, you can go ahead and see that I went ahead and shaved that down and started tack welding it. It goes right to the edge, right where it's supposed to go. So as soon as I get this completely welded and sanded down, I've got to pull the quarter panel off because I'm just fitting everything right now. And then we're going to weld in that inner and outer wheelhouse. All right, so you see that I've got it all welded in, ground down. The edge matches up perfect. I'm going to pull this quarter panel back off, and we're going to get that inner and outer wheelhouse welded in. All right, we're gonna get ready to get this inner and outer wheelhouse for the passenger side welded in. I've got all these holes drilled out 5/16. The distance between each one, I set it up as 1.5 inches. I looked at the original one. It's anywhere from 1 inch to 2 inches, so I wanted to try and be evenly spaced. You can see the other spots. Those are the areas that some of the brackets are going to have to weld on. So we're going to go ahead and spray the weld through primer on this, and then we're going to get this welded up. All right, so I clamped this in place. I actually put on the quarter panel again just to make sure the fit was good. And let's go ahead and weld this in place. All right, so we've got the inner and outer wheelhouse all welded in. We've got our welds that you're gonna see ground down. All I can say is take your time on these. You see I ground down these welds. This is in the trunk area along with that, but I mean this isn't gonna be as visible. So I left it just like factory had. And these are like 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch welds. Same thing in the back seat. There are areas, you know, that you're going to have a little bit of a distance between your weld and the surface you're welding. Make sure to use just like some screws or clecos or something to draw it down tight, or as tight as you can get it. All right, so we started on the quarter panel itself. I started drilling out on where my spot welds are going to be. I have a distance about 1 3/4 inches on all of these as well. So I'm prepping this. The area that I had to cut to make the wheel well arch perfect so that this distance was correct. I actually put some rust bullet on there so that I put 2 coats on that, so I made sure that that's not going to rust. On the body itself, I'm going to paint all this black. I did put some weld through primer on this on the areas that we're going to weld, but this area around here we're gonna just go ahead and paint black before we put the quarter panel on. I'm just brushing this stuff on. No one will ever see this area at all when it's all done, when the quarter panel's on there. I am using rust bullet black shell. This stuff dries hard as a rock. So let's go ahead and get this done. All right, so we got everything painted. It's not the prettiest thing, but it's going to keep it from corroding. It'll be a lot nicer if you're working on the inside here of the quarter panel. So let's go ahead and get this quarter panel on. I'm going to clamp it in place, take a bunch of measurements, and then we'll start welding. All right, I want to show you real quick. So these quarter panels have like slots and holes, and I'm sure it's just for alignment. You can see we're off a little bit, but you can take an awl or something, align everything. You can see these slots start to line up, and you can get it really close to where you need to be. All right, so we've got the quarter panel and clamped up in place on the upper portion of it. I'll start welding. This is about as close as I can get to the measurements. There's going to be a little bit of a compromise, and there's going to be some tweaking later on, I'm sure, with the door. But make sure you double check your measurements. So let's go ahead and start welding this in. Well, we've got all of our spot welds up top. This is the only area that I've got welded in. We're going to go ahead and drop down here onto the rocker. And normally people will actually spot weld the backside, which is hard access, extremely hard to get to from the backside. What we're going to do is we're going to weld this all the way across, you know, doing a little spot here and there till we get a seamless seam, and it's going to look a lot better. The quarter panel will flow right into the outer rocker. It looks a little bit more trick, I believe. So let's go ahead and get this welded in. All right, so I'm using the straight edge. We're going to try and get the quarter panel and the rocker lined up perfectly. We're going to put a tack right here. We're going to do the same on the back side. Hopefully it will flow nice and even so that we can just put just a little bit of filler on this. We'll have a complete weld going all the way across. Okay, so I've got it tacked in the front, middle, and back. I'm gonna start filling in the welds, letting it cool, and we'll try and get a seamless seam there, and then I'll grind it down, and we'll see how it looks then. So while I'm letting all this cool, I'm going to go ahead and clamp in onto the wheel well lip and start working my way around that, give that time to cool, and just keep on moving back and forth. All right, so you can see I'm slowly getting this filled in. We're going to keep on working, and I'll show you when it's all filled in, and then we'll sand it down. All right, so we got this fully welded. I'm going to go ahead and grind this down. There's going to be spots. You're always going to have spots. You're going to have to fill in again and grind down. So we're going to again get started with that. While I was waiting for a lot of this stuff to cool, I got a lot of the other pieces welded on, which is pretty simple to do. Up in this leading edge of the quarter panel, there's almost like a lip that's bent out. So I just took a large punch and just tap it all the way down, and was able to bend that lip to where it was almost flush with the door jamb itself. So I've got some spot welds in there. I'll probably go back through. I may weld this fully, or I may just keep on spot welding, then grind those down, make it look a little bit better. All right, so I went ahead and ground this down. I did have to spot weld a few other spots, tack in there, and then grind it back down. This came out really well. I'm happy with this. I am continuing to tack on this, try and get a complete tack on that, and then I'll grind that down. That's going to be a pain in the butt to grind down. And then I'm also doing the wheel well arch. All right, to show you guys real quick, when you put on the quarter panel, this trunk drop off, this panel behind that gets welded to, there's going to be a lot of excess metal. This was hanging way down low. You can see that there's a lot of excess up here, so I'm going to cut all this off, come straight down, and pull off this entire piece. All right, just show you guys real quick. We've got the quarter panel all welded in, ground down. It looks really good. I'm really happy with the result. You know, we've got that all ground down on the rocker itself. Hopefully we'll be able to smooth that out. I will show you one tool that you got to get if you're doing a lot of body work. This thing, I swear, saved my life. One of these mini sanders. I got this one from Eastwood, and I think it's like $69. And I'll try and throw a link in the description. Also, their sanding belts, they're a little pricey. I actually got some on Amazon, and they work a lot better than the ones I got from Eastwood. And I'll throw that link in the description as well. This thing is worth its weight in gold. I may end up going to the other side rocker instead of the taillight panel. I still haven't decided, just for the fact that I need to get this seat pan, the upper and lower support done. It would be nice to get that done, and then I can work my way back the quarter and then go to the taillight panel. So other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you learned something, and I hope to see you on another episode of Torqued.